Frank Agagnale case study. Focus on forgery and counterfeit. Conman consultant. Frank William Agagnale Jr., born April 27, 1948, is known for his career as a conman, check forger, and imposter when he was 15 to 21 years old. He became one of the most notorious imposters, claiming to have assumed no fewer than 8 identities, including an airline pilot, a physician, a U.S. Bureau of Prisons agent, and a lawyer. Agagnale escaped from police custody twice before turning 22 years old. His story has been told through many mediums, including the 2002 movie Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks. First con. Agagnale grew up in New Rochelle, New York. His father was an affluent local who became his first victim. Agagnale's father gave him a gasoline credit card and a truck to assist him in commuting to his part-time job. To get date money, Agagnale devised a scheme in which he used the gasoline card to buy tires, batteries, and other car-related items at gas stations, and then asked the attendants to give him cash in return for the products. Ultimately, his father was liable for a bill amounting to $8,400. Agagnale was only 15 at the time. Bank fraud. Agagnale's early confidence tricks included writing personal checks on his own overdrawn account. This, however, would work for only a limited time before the bank demanded payment. So he moved on to opening other accounts at different banks, eventually creating new identities to sustain this charade. Over time and through experimentation, he developed different ways of defrauding banks, such as printing out his own copies of checks, such as payroll checks, depositing them, and encouraging banks to advance him cash on the basis of his account balances. Another trick he used was to magnetically print his account number on blank deposit slips and add them to the stack of real blank slips in the bank. This resulted in the deposits written on those slips by bank customers entering his account rather than the accounts of the legitimate customers. In a speech, Agagnale described an occasion when he noticed the location where airlines and car rental businesses such as United Airlines and Hertz would drop off their daily collections of money in a bag and then deposit them into a drop box on the airport premises. Using a security card disguise he bought at a local costume shop, he put a sign over the box saying, "Out of service, place deposits with security guard on duty," and collected money in that manner. Later, he disclosed how he could not believe this idea had worked, stating with some astonishment, "How can a drop box be out of service?" Impersonations. Agagnale decided to impersonate a pilot to look more legitimate when cashing checks. He obtained a uniform by calling Pan American World Airways, Pan Am, telling the airline that he lost his uniform while getting it cleaned at his hotel, and got a new one with a fake employee ID number. He then forged a Federal Aviation Administration pilot's license. Pan Am estimated that between the ages of 16 and 18, Agagnale flew more than 1 million miles on more than 250 flights and flew to 26 countries by deadheading or traveling as a member of staff on a normal passenger plane. Agagnale also impersonated a chief resident pediatrician in a Georgia hospital. After befriending a real doctor, he agreed to act as a supervisor of resident interns. He was able to fake his way through most of his duties by letting the interns complete the work themselves during his shifts. However, he was nearly exposed when an infant became critically unwell from oxygen deprivation, and he didn't initially understand the gravity of the situation. He left the hospital only after he realized he couldn't respond to life or death situations and put other people at risk. While posing as Pan Am First Officer Robert Black, Agagnale forged a Harvard University law transcript, passed the Louisiana bar exam, and got a job at the Louisiana State Attorney General's office at the age of 19. He told a flight attendant he had briefly dated that he was also a Harvard Law School student, and she introduced him to a lawyer friend. After making a fake transcript from Harvard, he prepared himself for the compulsory exam. Despite failing twice, he claims to have passed the bar exam legitimately on the third try after 8 weeks of study. However, a real Harvard graduate also worked for the Attorney General, and he hounded Agagnale with questions about his tenure at Harvard. Agagnale had trouble crafting a plausible story for himself as an undergraduate of a university he never attended, and the co-worker soon became suspicious, repeatedly interrogating Agagnale. Due to his doubts about his credentials, the co-worker had contacted Harvard in order to confirm Agagnale's academic qualifications. Finding none, he convinced his boss to launch a background check on Agagnale. However, Agagnale resigned before he could be exposed. Capture and imprisonment. Agagnale was eventually arrested in Montpellier, France in 1969 when an Air France attendant he had previously dated recognized him and informed police. When the French police arrested him, 12 countries in which he had committed fraud sought his extradition. After a few trials in different countries and minimal jail time, a Swedish judge asked a U.S. State Department official to revoke his passport. Without a passport, the Swedish authorities were forced to deport him to the United States, where he was sentenced to 12 years in a federal prison for multiple counts of forgery. While being deported to the United States, Agagnale escaped from a British airliner as it was taxiing at New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport. He scaled a nearby fence and hailed a cab to Grand Central. Agagnale caught a train to Canada to buy a ticket to Brazil. He was apprehended by a constable of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police while standing in line at the ticket counter and given to the U.S. Border Patrol. In April 1971, Agagnale reportedly escaped from the federal detention center in Atlanta, Georgia, while awaiting trial. U.S. prisons were being condemned by civil rights groups and investigated by congressional committees, and in a stroke of luck that included the accompanying U.S. Marshal forgetting his detention commitment papers, Agagnale was mistaken for an undercover prison inspector. He contacted a friend he called Jean Sebring, who posed as his fiancée, and slipped him the business card of Inspector C.W. Dunlap of the Bureau of Prisons and the business card of Sean O'Reilly, the FBI agent in charge of Agagnale's case. Using these fake business cards, Agagnale was able to provide the proof of his role as a prison inspector. Agagnale said he needed to contact FBI agent Sean O'Reilly on a matter of urgent business. O'Reilly's number was altered on the business card by Sebring, and when it was dialed, Sebring answered at a payphone in an Atlanta shopping mall, posing as an operator at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Later, Agagnale was allowed to meet unsupervised with the FBI agent in a predetermined car outside the detention center. Sebring picked up Agagnale and drove him to an Atlanta bus station where he took a Greyhound bus to New York and soon thereafter a train to Washington, D.C. Agagnale escaped another attempted capture by posing as an FBI agent after being recognized by a motel registration clerk. Agagnale was picked up a few weeks later by two NYPD detectives when he walked past their unmarked police car. Legitimate jobs. In 1974, after he had served fewer than 7 years of his 12-year sentence, the U.S. federal government released him on the condition that he helped the federal authorities, without pay, to investigate crimes committed by fraud and scam artists. After his release, he approached a bank with an offer. He explained to the bank what he had done and offered to speak to the bank staff and show them various tricks that paper hangers use to defraud banks. He offered his services for free if they didn't find his speech helpful, otherwise they would pay him $50 and agree to share his name with other banks. With that, he began a legitimate life as a security consultant. In 2015, Agagnale was named the AARP Fraud Watch Ambassador. In 2018, he began co-hosting the AARP podcast, The Perfect Scam, about scammers and how they operate. He later founded Agagnale & Associates, based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which advises companies on fraud issues. Agagnale also continues to advise the FBI, with whom he has been associated for more than 40 years by teaching at the FBI Academy and lecturing for FBI field offices throughout the country. According to his website, more than 14,000 institutions have adopted Agagnale's fraud prevention programs.